Hi, I'm Eric Sirifos Miller, and I'm local judge. This is Brandon Young.
Hi guys, I'm Brandon. I work here at Epic Loot. I'm the backup judge when he's not around. Just showing you guys what I bring to the table.
Yeah,
on the off chance I get to play Magic.
Yes, isn't it great when you get to play Magic?
Occasionally,
periodically?
yeah.
And we've got colorless Serum Powder Eldrazi. So I'm excited to talk about this, but why this particular version?
So, at first I didn't like Eldrazi as a concept during like Eldrazi Winter and stuff. But then as Modern kind of fleshed out more and more, Ivern got banned, other decks popped up. I liked the idea of playing these really big, dumb things, especially when you have these low-to-the-ground human decks and these degenerate combo decks, KCI. However, I felt that the traditional Eldrazi mid-range decks, like Bant Eldrazi and stuff, couldn't quite keep up with the current meta, with how good the humans became, how good certain control packages became. So I kind of just skipped the whole mid-range thing and decided to just make it as fast as I could. I saw this list online, or one similar to it, and I thought it was cheesy at first, but then I played it, and I've been in love with it ever since. This is the longest I've had a Modern deck in my life. That I've kept a Modern deck.
That's
I'm usually pretty schizophrenic on that kind of stuff, but I like this one a lot.
I actually kind of forgot about that. Yeah, you used to swap decks a lot.
I was on Burn, and then I was on this, and then that. Yeah.
All right, well, let's dive right into it. Let's look at the deck. So we have up top your standard Eldrazi package, Eldrazi Mimic.
Yeah, so you have your basic creature package, at least Mimic, Reshaper, Thought Knot, Reality Smasher is the standard. Eternal Scourge is pretty new to this deck archetype.
What does it bring to the table?
So it's a 3/3 for 3. It's pretty plain, but you can cast it from exile. That's the important part. It has that weird text on it. That comes into play through various different means, like Serum Powder we'll get to later, Gemstone Caverns, and if I exile my own graveyard, like with Scavenger Grounds, it goes into exile. Additionally, if it becomes targeted, it goes into exile before the spell resolves.
That's pretty.
Which has some weird interactions with spells like Maelstrom Pulse, because I once had like 2 or 3 of them on the board, and they Maelstrom Pulsed one.
Okay.
And with the trigger, and then that triggered it, and it went into exile. The Maelstrom Pulse went to resolve, it was no longer there, and it fizzled, so the other 2 stuck around.
That's actually really
Yeah,
cool.
it's really cool, actually. So,
So it's kind of resilient to removal, kind of in the same way Reality Smasher is.
yeah, absolutely. So this card, I haven't lost a Jund if I resolve one of those, because all of their cards are one target.
Yeah, yeah.
Terminate it, put it back. Bolt it, put it back. It's just they can't deal with it over and over again.
That's pretty good. But then, like you said, you have the standard Eldrazi package. Matter Shaper replaces itself.
Yeah.
Thought Knot Seer rips a card out of their hand. Reality Smasher is just the best
It just
4-turn
it just
clock.
closes games. Especially if you land it with a Mimic, the game's basically over unless they have removal on that turn.
Yeah,
Back-to-back turns of 10 and then whatever else is just hard to come back from.
seems pretty good. Let's move on. We'll get to this guy in a minute when we talk about mana. Dismember, you have that as a 4 of, and the only removal spell in the main.
So my game plan is to kill them before they get to play very much Magic.
Okay.
For that matter, I chose Dismember because any of my mana sources, including Spirit Guide, can cast it, and my life doesn't matter at that point. I pay for X mana willy-nilly. There's really no need to do it, because if you're concerned about your life total, you're already losing that game. The way this deck plays, you're already losing that game.
Okay.
It deals with pretty much any major threat in the format. It beats up other Reality Smashers. It beats up big Tarmogoyfs. It beats up Tasigur and Garmog Angler in the Hollow One matchups. You can fade it on turn 1.
Yeah.
If you have Seeing Spirit Guide, they play a guy. You can, on your end step, Spirit Guide Dismember it before you get to do anything.
That seems pretty
You
cool.
have these turn 0 Dismembers you can just blow people out with.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about Chalice of the Void.
So, Chalice is my backup plan to stop them from playing Magic, or at least delay them from playing Magic. My deck folds early removal, so if my Mimic gets pushed on turn 1, I'm in a rough spot.
Yeah.
If my Thought Knot gets pathed early turns, I'm in a rough spot. So this doesn't always win me the game. Sometimes it does, but doesn't always win me the game. But it helps slow them down enough for me to deal my damage before it becomes relevant.
Okay, that's pretty cool. Now this here's the zest.
Yeah.
Serum Powder. Talk to
Okay.
me about Serum Powder.
Okay.
What does it do?
So basically, this deck wants to be a 40 card deck, but you have to play 60 cards. So it's like if I could get away with not playing Scourges and not playing some of these lands and only play 40 cards, and it would just be 4, and a couple of those. This helps you get rid of the bad cards while thinning your deck and keeping as many good cards as possible. It gives you free mulligans, and the important part is it puts Eternal Scourges into exile.
That's actually a very good interaction.
So
right
if I
there.
Seer and Powder away Eternal Scourge, I basically have an 8th card in my hand.
That's pretty
Basically,
good.
this deck wants to aggressively mulligan to Eldrazi Temple and other cards. That's what you want to find. You want to find temples and other cards, and this gives you 4 free mulligans on top of the ones you already get.
It's pretty good.
I have mulligan to 4 in this deck. It's rough, actual mulligan to 4, but this helps clear up a lot of that like downtime you don't normally get, or that this deck. Excuse me. This deck does not mulligan very forgivingly, and this helps shore it up a little bit.
That's pretty good. Now we have this one of Smuggler's Copter.
So, on the off chance the game gets to a point where it's up in the air, no pun intended, and kind of close, this helps close out a lot of close games. It can fly over guys and kill planeswalkers. It's really easy to crew. You can animate Blinkmoth Nexus, crew 1 into it, and get in with it. Got a couple extra draws here and there where it's relevant. A lot of the time it isn't super relevant. It has 1v games though. That's why it's a 1 of. I don't want to rely on it, but it does help close out and push damage where else I wouldn't otherwise find it.
Awesome. So now let's look at your mana. It's pretty
It's
straightforward.
So this is just a soul land.
Yep.
I've got these 4 and these 2 as man lands.
All right. So the Nexus and the Mutables.
Yeah. So I've got 6
And
man lands there.
for those who aren't aware, Soul Land is referring to Soul Ring.
Soul
It's
Ring taps for 2 mana. This land basically taps for 2 mana as long as I'm paying for Eldrazi.
Yes.
Gemstone Caverns is another one of my acceleration engines. So if the way this works, if I'm on the draw, only works when I'm on the draw, if it's in my opening hand, I can cheat it into play at the same time Leylines come into play.
It's pretty good.
So before the game starts, I have this land. The caveat is that I have to exile a card for that to work.
But you could exile
But I
this
can
Eternal
exile an
Scourge.
Eternal Scourge, so I effectively get a free land and still have that extra card in my hand.
I like
So,
this Eternal Scourge.
Yeah,
a
it's
lot.
really, really cool. So the main acceleration plan is to get Gemstone Caverns before the game starts, Simian Spirit Guide, Eldrazi Temple, and these crazy fast starts.
So you can get like a Thought Knot Seer on turn
Yeah,
1.
so I was sold in this deck when the first ever round I played with this constructed deck. I was playing against Jeskai Control.
Okay.
Got to game 3 through various means. I was on the draw. Start the game with Gemstone Cavern. I draw Temple, Spirit Guide, Thought Knot, you turn 1. That felt pretty cool.
And he's probably on like, here's a
I
tap
took
land.
he was on Colonnade Pass, something like that.
Ugh.
So I took a path. The one path he had for this.
Incredible.
Yeah. Turn 2, a second Spirit Guide and a Reality Smasher. That was and I 9'd him on turn 2. The deck was sold for me.
That's pretty incredible. Let's look at some more mana. We have the Seagate Wreckage. Now, that's a pretty cool utility land.
It is. So this deck gets Hellbent very, very quickly. Mostly because Gemstone Caverns pitches a card, so you're already down 1 card. You're playing extra cards to get mana, so you're pitching cards that way.
Hellbent being that you have no cards in hand.
Correct. Hellbent being no cards in hand. This helps shore that up a little bit. So if you have all these lands, nothing to do, on their end step you can draw a card with it, or on your upkeep you can draw a card before your actual draw step. Then you get 2 cards in a turn. It's just cheeky card draw to help when you otherwise wouldn't have it.
Okay. Moving on, we have Ghost Quarters. Now, a lot of people have been playing Field of Ruin over Ghost Quarter. Why Ghost Quarter over Field of Ruin?
So I only have 2 basics in my deck. If I Field of Ruin away their lands and get my 2 basics, I'm extremely susceptible to their land removal.
Okay.
So if I get Ghost Quarter or Field of Ruin back, I would have no lands to get there. Additionally, I don't really want to have to pay mana into it to get mana back. I want to be paying mana aggressively towards creatures, spells, other things like that.
Awesome. That makes a lot of sense. Now, we have 2 caverns here. Cavern of Souls makes it so you name a creature type, it becomes uncounterable. Why only 2 in such a tribal-heavy deck?
This deck, as linear as it is, needs some kind of utility in its land base.
Okay.
So, in matchups where countering doesn't matter, these lands become dead. So they're basically just glorified basic lands.
That makes sense.
In matchups where I would definitely more prefer extra creatures on board with the Nexuses and the Mutavaults, or Scavenger Grounds, Exile Graveyards, and Dredge matchups, that kind of stuff.
Makes a lot of sense.
These underperform in those matchups.
Okay.
But then they come in clutch in control matchups where they really, really matter.
That makes a lot of sense. Speaking of which, we have the 2 scavenger grounds. They sacrifice a desert.
So they can sacrifice themselves or the other copy of it.
Okay, and then exile all graveyards?
All cards from all graveyards.
That's pretty good.
So they're basically like main board relic representatives almost. It's very good. It surprises people. They don't expect graveyard hate in the main board. What's also cheeky about it is you got to get Eternal Scourge.
Yep.
If they've died at various sources, I can exile graveyards, put them in exile. Now I have extra creatures I can recast.
It seems pretty good. Now, we touched on the Simian Spirit guides. I wanted to get back to it real quick. Now, this is some premium accelerant.
Yes,
here.
absolutely.
Do you keep hands where you have like just 3 mana monkeys?
I
as they're called?
have kept a hand of land, triple that, and Thought Not Seer, and 2 other uncastables. I've kept that hand. I don't remember if I lost the game or not, but it is extremely difficult to not keep that hand at that point.
This seems hilarious.
Yeah,
All right. Well, let's move on to the sideboard. There's 3 copies of Warping Whale. That's a very versatile Magic card.
Yeah, so I started with Spatial Contortion, which was 2 mana instant, give a creature +3/-3. It's just a removal. It can kill small guys. It can buff up my Reality Smashers and bigger guys to cheat damage. Warping Whale just gave me way more utility overall. For those curious, it's a 2 mana instant. Its modes are exile a creature with power or toughness, 1 or lower, counter a sorcery spell,
Yep.
or spawn a 0/1 Eldrazi Scion that you can sack for mana.
Yep.
It's given me so much utility. I can counter Scape Shifts with it when they don't expect it because it's sorcery.
Isn't it a 1/1?
It might be a 1/1. I think.
It is
Right,
a 1/1.
Yeah, the older one. The older.
Yeah, the old
original-
Eldrazi
those were
tokens are
0/1.
0/1s.
See, this is a 1/1.
Yeah, we have fancy Battle for
Yeah.
Zendikar.
So you can instant speed cheat and like clutch blockers if you don't have man lands to keep it up. You
Yep.
can counter important spells like Scape Shift,
Yep.
Ancient Stirrings on a clutch turn, things like that. And you can also exile creatures with power toughness 1 or lower.
Yeah.
Which beats Infect for all 2 Infect players or whatever that still exist. But also Noble Hierarchs.
It shoots birds.
It shoots birds.
Shoots birds
it
dead.
shoots Dark Confidants. It shoots
Yep.
Snapcasters. It's actually
That seems like
this card's overperformed for me.
That seems great. Let's talk about Ratchet Bomb.
Ratchet Bomb. Originally, the sideboard was full Ratchet Bombs. Not a 2/2 split of Ratchet Bomb all is dust.
Okay, so what's the move? So what makes Ratchet Bomb good, but what makes it not good enough to run 4?
Ratchet Bomb is very, very good against token decks because you can just pop it on 0, or just present a threat. So if you get Blood Moon, you can just present this, and they know they have to deal with it. You can play it early, so it doesn't interfere with your heavy creature curve later on. It's also relevant later in the game because it blows up, I believe, Mox Opals and stuff. I don't think they're indestructible.
No.
Yeah, it blows up Mox Opals and things like that.
Yeah.
I moved to 2 All Is Dust because I was finding myself losing to decks like Humans sometimes, or very like go wide decks like the Company decks and things like that.
Makes sense.
This just is a blowout sometimes. They don't expect it. In an aggro
Yeah.
deck to play the 7-drop, but this becomes much cheaper because I have Eldrazi Temples.
you
and
have
this
the
is
temples, you
yeah.
have the mana
Yeah.
monkeys, you can
Serum
cheat
Powder, by
that.
the way, can be cast as a permanent.
It makes mana?
It is a 3-mana artifact that taps for 1 colorless mana. So even if you don't use it to mulligan your hand, you can use it later. You can draw them it's not good.
No.
But you can play it as a permanent. Fun fact: this floats colorless mana through Blood Moon, whereas the rest of my lands all tap for red through Blood Moon minus the waste. These float colorless, which I can then cast my Eldrazi with. I
That's actually
have
really
won
cool.
games doing that.
That's actually really interesting. All right, moving on, we have Gut Shots, other pretty boilerplate removal spells.
Yeah, it's also so if you run the math, with the amount of 4s and 5s, there's actually a surprising amount of time people live at 1 just through through combat math. So this can cheat out there. It can shoot dorks early. It's just and it can snipe out some kind of certain combo pieces and whatnot.
Okay.
It's just good overall removal.
Yep. Then we have 4 relics, and that's pretty boilerplate.
That's pretty staple in a lot of colorless decks. It just does everything. It's a 2-mana cantrip late game. It keeps their graveyards down early and blows them out late game.
Yep.
It's pretty easy to keep track of.
Surgical is also pretty standard sideboard card.
Sniping. Yeah, you just snipe combo pieces with it.
I do want to talk about this Spyglass, though. Why Spyglass over something like Pithing Needle?
So, when we were looking at this, and a lot of the Legacy Eldrazi lists play Sorcerer Spyglass because they have cards like Ancient Tomb, City Traders that can just naturally tap 2 mana. I don't have any of those, so I can't cast it on turn 1 unless I have a Simian Spirit Guide or the Gemstone Cavern to ramp. But there are no cards I'm afraid of on turn 1, really.
That's super fair.
At least nothing that I want to Epiphany on turn 1 on. There's no crazy like Mox Opal or Mox Diamonds or anything like that. So anything I can cast on turn 1, I'm safe to cast on turn 2. And the information part of it they see in their hand is much more important to me.
That seems
than
pretty
playing
good.
on turn 1.
Yeah. So that's the deck. Do you have any like kind of closing remarks for us?
So I picked this deck because I didn't want to think very much when I played Magic, but then when I played it more and more, I was actually surprised at how intricate some of the deck gets. So like Chalicing on 0 sometimes, or ramping into turn 1 Chalice on 1 with a Spirit Guide, blowing them out that way. Some of the interactions with things like Eternal Scourge and with these guys being goofy. I was overall very, very impressed with the deck, and I've done pretty well with it so far. I don't think I've lost that many, like gone negative in that many events we've had so far.
Seems pretty good. All right. Well, anything else?
I think that's it.
All right.
Hope you guys liked it.
Yeah. Well, again, I'm Eric Sirifoss Miller,
I'm Brandon Young.
and we will see you in our next Deck Tech. Goodbye.